Host Eric here. It's like people. We're going to talk about common skeptic arguments regarding cognitive functions and whether they're right or wrong or whatever. So here we go. I will provide you some skeptic arguments, and you guys address them.
Okay.
Number one. Oh, hey Taylor, you had your face covered with the attendees list. Number one. Cognitive functions aren't real because if they were, then there'd be some part of the brain that we could point to and say that's the cognitive function.
But they're not about whether or not they're real, but whether or not we can classify ins and outs of different behaviors. So if it behaves in a certain way, we can know the interior and exterior of it.
I'm not convinced. Better explanation?
Let's look at it this way. There's only a given number of ways you can interact with an environment. Would you concede to that?
No, I have infinite number of ways. I have infinite. I could move my hand this much or this much or this much.
He does have infinite numbers of ways. I'll confirm that.
Well, see, it's interesting that you said that. Can kind of your bow, because I would approach it from like there is a given number of ways we can perceive information and how one deals with that information, and through that it can lead to certain behaviors that perhaps could be categorized in those models of cognition.
So it's not an object in the brain? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess you could point to
No, it's just like how physics isn't like for kinetic energy, it's for the potentiality of something. So it's about whether or not we can ontologically confirm something as, or classify something as, its function, so its identity.
I don't understand what that means.
So if something is behaving in a certain way, we can categorize it things.
Again, Bo. Again with the brilliant observations. I want to thank you for pointing out obvious things that we might otherwise not pay attention to. You know, I want you to point out also. I want you to point out also that birds sing. Okay, birds do sing. It's true. Any other thoughts on this?
Eric, you play the negation here.
Okay, well, I mean, my point is there's not a physical structure in the brain that shows me that, in fact, cognitive functions are real in any meaningful sense of the word. That it's all based on this one guy's theory named Carl Jung who says that people are dividable into 16 different types of people. But even if it's the case that people fall into general categories, there's no reason to believe that there's exactly 16 of them. In fact, these models themselves always provide subtypes and subtypes of subtypes, and there ends up being an infinite number of types. So what's the fucking difference? It's a totally arbitrary taxonomy, and this idea of there being exactly four functions that have two different orientations or attitudes, as they say, is absurd because I can both have my own feelings and be aware of and respect somebody else's feelings. It doesn't make any sense to say that only one of those is conscious. I'm consciously aware of my FI.
The model never claims that you can't. Everyone uses all of the functions. Your type would be a sort of categorization of someone who prefers certain functions over others. By no means does someone completely ignore some aspects of reality because they prefer. And in engaging certain behavior, we can categorize that behavior into particular cognitive types. And
you have to look at them as concepts. Like, kinetic energy is a concept we use to measure subjective traits. So we reduce them into certain qualia or like analysis through its interior and exterior.
So wait,
and we divide them based on what we can see.
What am I supposed to deduce from? Say the beginning part of it again. What am I supposed to deduce from this again? You're saying it's a law that I'm supposed to deduce what?
What? A law?
Okay, I didn't get the beginning of it. I missed it. You actually had it.
You
had a point. Okay, you had a point. I don't remember what it was. I couldn't quite catch it though, and you've forgotten it. Anyway, I'm still playing the nag. I'm not done playing the nag.
put you a switch.
I don't want to switch. I want to be the neg. Why do you want to be neg?
Because I just want to hear your arguments for F. That's really what it is.
Okay, well, fine. Fine, let's switch. You be neg.
It's unfalsifiable.
What's unfalsifiable? The model?
Yeah, the cognitive functions.
Are you saying the existence of a cognitive function is not falsifiable, or are you saying the model's not falsifiable?
I'm saying that we can categorize behavior into certain, concepts if we want, but that's just a human tendency to try to categorize behavior, and that ultimately the model is not predictive, and if you wanted a model that was predictive, you could refer to something like the B5.
I would disagree that the model's not predictive. I say it is predictive. And we could, in fact, sort of seek out evidence to finalize that point. I don't know if that evidence exists yet or not. Until I see counter evidence, I'm going on my anecdotal behavioral stuff for my own purposes. I'm not making this as a justification. I'm just saying, barring counter evidence, I'm going with what I've experienced here regarding that point about whether or not it's predictive, that I can, in fact, expect, if not predictions, at least it will give me correlations. That if you type as this, then the following behaviors are going to be expected. Now, you might say, well, that's just describing grouped traits, like a shotgun, Texas sharpshooter fallacy. But my point is, we can predict behaviors that would appear to be unrelated, disparate behaviors that will link and explain why they link, and we can, and we are going to necessarily explain why two apparently disparate things are linked. We're going to try to explain why and how it's linked, and this is the best mechanism to do so, pending a better mechanism being explained to me.
All I have to say, wait, can I say something? All I have to say is it's like trying to fit a square into a circle. You are taking something with an infinite amount of sides and trying to reduce it to something that is 4 vertices or 4 qualities. And in that reduction, you're not making something that is of the objective essence, but of something that is already in its own form. So you're just
Okay, but you're wrong about your central point. You're wrong about your central point, because here's why. Just because I can't say exactly where my leg ends and my crotch begins, and I can't say exactly where my arm ends and my shoulder begins, doesn't mean I don't have 2 arms and 2 legs. So your point is that just because these things are mushy, you can't tell exactly where some of the borders are, that therefore we don't have 4 functions.
I will say, here, my response to the earlier thing, the problem with the model would be that it's only predictive or replicative on an individual level, on a subjective level for someone's own personal adjudication of behavior. But for something like the Big Five, it's proven to be predictive, and if we're going to worry about prediction of behavior, which is the aims of psychology anyways, then we ought to prefer a system that already is predictive, aside from something that makes claims about how one's cognition ought to be or might be based on no empirical evidence.
Well, in response to that, I would say, number one, the Big Five doesn't really say anything. You say it's predictive, but okay, I mean, it's sort of like saying it predicts circles are going to be round. You know, like, okay, well, whoop-de-doo, Big Five. Wow, you made that prediction? Ooh, that neurotic people are more neurotic? Wow. You know, good job, I guess. I don't know. It's not making claims worth investing the time into. There has to be a certain scope of magnitude to the processing power of a given model. I'm saying that this model has high processing power because it allows you to taxonomy behavior into certain categories in a way that you can't with any other model quite the same way. I think that ability to taxonomy provides useful information and rings consistent with my life experience. If you don't find that to be the case, then that's fine. I'm not trying to claim that this model is superior to all others. I am making no absolute claims about it at all, except to say that I think it's useful and seems to be pretty accurate based on its descriptive effectiveness.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you take this strategy to battle? Would you risk your life if someone else or your enemy was a certain cognitive type? Would you risk your life to know the advantages of their weakness?
I mean,
No.
what
You want to put your life on it?
Well, first of all, no, because I'm sure I could find that out without risking my life, I would hope. Or if I couldn't find it out without risking my life, I'm very curious about what it is, the risking my life somehow is the mechanism.
I have a side question here. Let's say you're a psychologist, right? Let's say we're one of us here is like a therapist or something.
Okay.
In like
You don't
providing.
want to be my therapist. You do not want to be my fucking
In
therapist.
counseling someone, do you think it'd be better to not like talk about the they still use the mechanisms within MBTI, but not identify their behavior as certain functions? Like instead of saying like, oh, you have inferior FE, so you should do this, you could just say, I picked up that you have some issues with your FE or in relations to others, and therefore you should work on that. Do you think the latter should be better, or do you think it's better to present the model to someone and let them figure it out themselves?
Figure out themselves.
It depends if they're asking you.
Well, man, how do you present it? Like, just be like, I've got this model that I could show you, but...
I mean, I'd ask them what they wanted, right? I'd ask them what they wanted me to do. I'd say, here are your options.
If you're gonna create so much cognitive dissonance for them, then they're just gonna drop it.
Like I just said, I would ask them what they wanted me to do. Here are your options. What's your question, Abraham? That's not Abraham. That's Fernando.
Mike's muted.
We still can't hear you. Regardless.
Well, we can't hear you. Is there something wrong with the mic? Is it muted on your end?
We can't hear you.
Try refreshing the page real quick.
Press the orange button. Press the orange button. Press
I need
the
to
orange
try
button.
refreshing it.
All
I need to
right,
try refreshing it.
just start it over, Abraham. All right. So what were we talking about though before we got interrupted with that thing?
We're like ways to convince skeptics of the model.
Oh, right. I mean, I think that's the thing. I have no interest to convince skeptics if they're being skeptical about claims that I'm not making, right? So my claims are fairly mild about the model. It's that it's useful. I like it. It seems to describe a lot of people. It explains things in ways that weren't explained in any other model that were felt resonant with me. Like, obviously I'm going to utilize a model that I think has utility because it seems true or it seems to explain things, not because it fails to do so.
Do you think that? Well, the thing is, like, we don't use it for we use it for our own personal significance, right? But let's say we were going to introduce the cognitive model into an academic field to where psychologists would be able to use it. Then it would become important to convince someone as to why it ought to be preferred. And I think there's the sort of I guess where the issue of persuasion perhaps would.
I mean, I don't know if it ought to be preferred. I don't know if there's an advantage to telling.
If it works. See if the audio works for them now. Try talking.
Still can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
And we can't hear you. We can't hear you at all, though. Yes, I know you have little teeny ears.
No, he's gonna put in earphones. He's gonna put in earphones. Okay.
I got that, Zach. It was.
Okay.
Can you hear? Can you talk now? We can't hear you still. You guys got to figure that out, okay? Figure that out and then turn on the camera. Okay, well, I don't know. Figure it out. Call me if you need to. Call me. Or type it, or whatever. Alright. So... Right. I mean, that's the thing. What are your thoughts on the cognitive function model, Taylor? How do you incorporate it into your... Do you use it? Do you think would you defend it? How far would you defend it in argumentation?
Is the cognitive function model just cognitive functions as a theory?
Yeah, just the idea that you can divide people by, or understand people by having them have one of two orientations or attitudes to each of these four cognitive functions in the conscious stack. That idea.
I love it. It's very useful with my ex-wife.
I find, see, that's the thing for me too. I find that in using it to categorize people's behavior, it has definitely helped me be able to navigate my relationships with people better. Like,
It
definitely.
was really hard for me to understand healers before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because beforehand, it just seems like they're purposely being irrational.
Right. How can they not see the logic that you're beating them with?
Right.
You just got to hit harder.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I just felt like, well, if I can just get them to accept being pinned down so that they have to sit there and say, yes, I said these words. And yes, I just said these other exactly opposite words. And yes, that's fucking crazy. I want to hear those words from the other party. Women don't love that though. They just don't. They don't love it. They don't love that.
They don't. And they don't even always want solutions to their problems.
They don't always.
That's the weirdest thing to me about.
They always don't want solutions to their problems.
I had to test that. When I heard that from an employee, I had to test that out for like a solid 4 weeks before I accepted that that was in fact the truth.
Yeah, it's
But the people don't necessarily. Women don't want solutions to their problems.
They just want someone to hear their concerns.
But then are upset if you don't listen to them or if you zone out during it, you know. So you still have to pay enough attention to just kind of like give like checks that, yeah, I feel you.
But sometimes zoning out's okay. As long as you're kind of like holding eye contact. It's not about you anyways, it's about them. I had an ex-girlfriend who I could literally set the phone down and walk away and do stuff. And
Oh my god.
Well, the key words are, really. Go on. You just make a little recording of that loop, you know. Right,
or when
right.
they ask you like a question, it's always something morally neutral. Like it's always something like, I mean, I guess so, but some things are hard to invent, you know. How do you think it could be changed? Or something that's just like so neutral it could be applied to anything, you know. That's like the best response.
that's still even kind of an involved response.
Yeah.
I put the phone down and you can kind of hear the mumbly talk, and when it's stopped, I go, "What?" You just start over.
Oh my god.
He's a drug cartel. Who's this? He's a drug cartel? Unify?
Oh yeah, the tattoos gave it away.
Is that drug cartel tattoos?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they are. But regardless of that, I don't know. In fact, the message he sent me is a private message, but people don't understand. If you send me a private chat, right? I have chat up on the screen, and it goes on the video. Everybody can see the private chat in the video.
Yeah, we know.
Okay, because I don't know if they know. I've actually have this I don't know why I bothered hiding it, because there's got to be at least 1 second on the video where it shows up, where I notice, oh shit, there's that, I better move it. I don't know what he has to say to me, but regardless, I guess I could look at it. Let's just see. Let's spoil the surprise. I don't know if he knows it's private, but I never told him that there was any expectation of privacy here, and he shouldn't have thought there was one.
What did he say?
It's a YouTube channel. Who's got a smoke detector with the battery dying?
Me.
That's gonna fucking kill me.
Can you take out the battery? Can you take out the battery?
Let me try. Let me try.
It's easy to take it out. I've taken them out before because mine did that too.
Unscrew it and put it in the trunk of your car for a while, and it'll go away.
Thank you, Taylor. Your less FE saved the day. I have noticed that for a long time and never said anything.
What's that? I zoned out. I less FE.
He
Was it
said
gonna
that Eric's FE was preventing him from pointing it out.
Oh.
All right, let me take this fucking phone call. Hello.
Who's got SE? Does anyone have any SE?
Yeah, I just got your message.
No, I don't have any at all.
All right.
I don't think any of us here have it in our stack.
Yeah,
I think
it's,
everyone here is like ENTP or INTP.
Yeah,